Hi everybody. I just wanted to take a minute to tell you that I think we finally have time to do the next chapter in Ribsy. The kids are outside playing, so I don't think we'll have any interruptions. I can't guarantee anything, but I don't think we will have any interruptions. Also thought you might find it interesting that we have a special guest for our Ribsy Read Aloud today. I know we've always talked about how exciting it would be to have a dog in our classroom, so take a look. Trot has decided to join us for the read aloud. Again, who knows how long we can go without an interruption, but let's get started. So when we left off, Ribsy had created, along with the squirrel, all kinds of chaos in Mrs. Sonchek's classroom, and all of the adults were working really hard to make sure that that situation stopped, and most of the kids were not. I think if you think about the different perspective of the characters, it probably makes sense why adults were responding in one way and why kids were responding in another way. Okay, so let's see. I keep trying to mark our page where we left off, but Joey was trying to read this book last night, and I think he may have turned the page. All right, here we go. "Don't you dare sick that dog on my squirrel," said Danny. "Class," cried Mrs. Sonchek. The squirrel skittered into one of the cloakroom doors. Naturally, the whole class had to turn around to face the back of the room. Ribsy could hardly stand it. If they wouldn't let him go, he would show that squirrel a thing or two. "Now we've got him," said Mr. Woody. "Line up with the jackets at the other door, and I'll go in with the yardstick and chase him out." The three women stood at the door of the cloakroom, with jackets aimed, while Mr. Woody marched in the other door with the yardstick. Thumping and whacking could be heard from the cloakroom. "Look out! Here he comes!" yelled the principal. The teacher, the mother, and the school nurse crouched with their jackets. I'm sure you can visualize that. There was a flash of gray fur, and all three pounced. "I've got him!" cried the school nurse, who was on her knees clutching a wiggling jacket. "Quick, roll him up," said Mrs. Yaxley. She took the rolled-up squirrel and stuffed it, jacket and all, back into the wooden box. Ribsy felt the boy's hold on his collar relax. He made pathetic coughing sounds. "Hey, that's my jacket," said Billy. "I'll bring it back before lunch," said Danny's mom. "My mother isn't going to like it if that squirrel chews up my jacket," said Billy. Mrs. Yaxley looked as if she had had a very difficult morning. "If he does, I'll buy you a new one," she said in desperation. Turning to the principal, she added apologetically, "I am terribly sorry to have taken up so much classroom time." "But will the squirrel be okay?" asked one of the kids. "He's not rolled up that tight," answered Danny's mother, who was in a very big hurry to get the squirrel home to his cage. I never did get to tell everyone about my squirrel," complained Danny. "Never mind, Danny. You showed them, and that's enough." His mother spoke sharply before she escaped from the classroom with Frisky safe back inside the box. It was all over. The class slid back into their seats and waited to see what Mr. Woody would say about the interesting time they had had when they were supposed to be learning math. The principal came to the front of the room and gave Ribsy a very stern look. Then he faced the expectant class. "Boys and girls," he said in a very serious voice, "dogs are not allowed in school." The class looked guilty. They all knew this, but it was Mr. Woody himself who had called their dog the mascot. And I'm afraid I made a mistake in making an exception. Mr. Woody looked once more at Ribsy. Now Ribsy looked guilty. He understood he had done something wrong, but he was not quite sure what it was. He thought dogs were supposed to chase squirrels and get rid of them. "But this dog looked like such a friendly dog," continued Mr. Woody, "and he seemed so well behaved that I overlooked the rule." See, even grown-ups make mistakes sometimes. Ribsy waved his tail wistfully to show that he didn't mean to do anything wrong, and he really was a very nice dog. "Now we know," said Mr. Woody, "that a dog does not make a good mascot and that the rule was right. This should be a lesson for all of us, and I'm afraid this dog would have to go." I know if we were in the classroom together, as soon as I read this part, you'd all be going, "Oh no!" which is exactly how I would feel too. I guess having a dog like Ribsy in the classroom isn't quite like having a dog like this one. I know he's behaving well now, but he was whining just a little while ago. Let's see what happens next. When Mr. Woody looked right at Ribsy, he stopped wagging his tail and let it droop. He knew he had not succeeded in making everything all right again. He hung his head and looked dejected. "Come on, boy," said Mr. Woody kindly, and took hold of Ribsy's collar. "Come on, come with me." One of the girls in the front row began to cry. The whole class waved, and those in the last row of seats petted Ribsy as Mr. Woody led him out of the classroom. Mr. Woody did not let go of Ribsy's collar outside the classroom, or even until they got outside the building. He kept a tight grip until he had led Ribsy outside the metal fence that surrounded their schoolyard. Only then did he let go of Ribsy. He slammed the gate with a clang and said, "See you, fellow." Ribsy understood one thing. He was no longer wanted. This made him unhappy, and when Ribsy was unhappy, he seemed to droop all over. He took a few steps away from the gate, stopped, and looked hopefully back. Maybe this man would change his mind and call him, and he would come running. The man had not changed his mind. "Go home," he said firmly. Go home. That was a command that Ribsy understood. He had heard it many times on his very own street when he had run through neighbors' flower beds. He had heard it when Henry did not want him to chase after a car. Now the words reminded him of Henry and the familiar street with green lawns and trees. I would imagine that Ribsy right now is probably very blue-zoned. Very, very blue-zoned. He can't find Henry. He finally found a place where he was starting to feel comfortable with kids around him, even though he didn't have his Henry, and now he has to leave that place. "Go home," repeated the principal. After one more sad backwards glance, Ribsy started walking. He wanted to obey this man. He wanted to go home, but he didn't know where home was. And there was no way he could make the man understand that. Here's an illustration. Look at Ribsy's whole body in this illustration. Remember, as readers, we use illustrations to give us even more detail. It helps our eyes to visualize what our brain should be seeing. Look at Ribsy. He is definitely blue-zoned right now. The next chapter is Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is titled, Ribsy Goes to a Football Game. We'll read a little bit from this. "Hey, Henry, I have an idea," said Mr. Huggins at breakfast one morning, about a week after he had discontinued the advertisement for Ribsy in the newspaper. "This afternoon, when I get off from work, we'll go down to the Humane Society and pick out another dog." Let's stop for a minute and talk about this, because I know I would hear you going, "Oh, no!" So let's think about Mr. Huggins' perspective. He just wants to make his son feel better. Henry's been hurt and upset and missing his dog for months now. As a parent, I would want to make my child feel better too. But as a pet lover and a dog lover, I wouldn't get another dog. I would still keep looking for my dog. I want you to think about, if you were Henry, from Henry's perspective, what would some of your responses be? I really wish I could hear them, because I know you'd have some really great ones. Let's find out what he says. "I don't want another dog," said Henry. "I want Ribsy or nothing." "Henry, try to be reasonable," said his mother. "Ribsy's been gone almost a month. If we were going to find him, we would have found him by now." "I am being reasonable," said Henry. "I just want my dog, that's all. He's got to be someplace. He'll come home as soon as he can make it. I just know that he will. Maybe somebody has him tied up and he's chewing through the rope right now. How would he feel when he finally made it home and found another dog eating out of his dish?" "I don't quite know about that, Henry," said his father. "Ribsy's not exactly Lassie. He's just an ordinary city dog." "Maybe somebody has him fenced in and he's trying to dig his way out," said Henry, ignoring his father's remark. "I bet that's what he's doing right now, right this minute, digging under a fence to get back to me." So I'm going to stop at that point because it's a little bit of a cliffhanger, and that's how we always stop our stories. I will continue to record. Remember, you can find them on our Class Dojo page, and you can find the recordings that I do on my YouTube page. All you have to do is Google Miss Glanville YouTube, and you'll find me. I hope you're having a good afternoon. You don't have to listen to this today because technically it is the weekend, but I promise I'll continue to put stuff up. Remember, in your parents' emails, there are some things for you to do. I put a copy of our Math Mathematician sets in there, and there are lots of pages from our Skinny Go math book that we can use. I'm also going to be sending out a lot of blank game and activity boards so that we could do some activities and games on there. I know this is difficult. I know it's not easy, but we really have to use the power of our thoughts right now. We have to remind ourselves it's not going to last forever. Eventually, we will be able to get back to school, and we will be able to get back to our normal routines. In the meantime, we can use this as our normal routine. I hope you have a great afternoon. It's a really nice sunny day. Maybe you could even get some time outside. See you soon.